Mr. Scott, would you like to do a sound check?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Good morning, all. Denise Haas, can you hear me all right? This is Dwight Keene. Denise, can you hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Keene, I can hear you. Thank you.
There we go. Very good. Are you set to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right. You bet. We're ready then. Thank you. Good morning. I am Dwight Keene. I'm the chair of the Kansas Corporation Commission. I'm joined this morning by fellow Commissioner Susan Duffy and Commissioner Andrew French. At this time, I am convening the hearing in the matter of the investigation into Southern Pioneer Electric Company regarding the February 2021 winter weather events as contemplated by docket number 21-GIMX-331-GIE. As of February 9th, 2022, the commission has before it for its consideration within this docket a joint motion for a final order jointly filed by all parties to this docket. Due to the pandemic, we are conducting this hearing by Zoom and broadcasting to the public on YouTube. Bear with us if you experience any technical difficulties or glitches. This morning, we will first turn to the entries of appearance, and I will first turn in that respect to Southern Pioneer.
Good morning, commissioners, parties. My name is Glenda Kafer. I appear on behalf of Southern Pioneer Electric Company, and Lindsay Campbell, who is Executive Vice President and General Counsel, appears on behalf of the company as well.
Thank you, Glenda. National Beef.
Good morning, Commissioner. This is Frank Caro. I'm with the Posanelli Law Firm, along with Ann Callenbach, appearing on behalf of National Beef. Ann will be making the opening statement this morning. Unfortunately, I have to be at a funeral, so my apologies to the commission.
Thank you, Frank. Western Kansas Industrial Energy Consumers. You're muted, Jim. Still muted.
How's that?
Much better.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Zakora and Connor Thompson on behalf of the Western Kansas Industrial Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Curb.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joseph Astrab, along with Consumer Counsel David Nickel and Attorney Todd Love, are here on behalf of the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. The Kcc staff.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carly Massentine and Terry Pemberton on behalf of Kcc staff and the public generally.
All right, thank you, Carly. At this time, does the staff have a recommendation regarding notice?
Yes. Staff has examined notice and reports that on January 27th, 2022, the presiding officer issued an order setting procedural schedule, which set the evidentiary hearing for today's date and time. This order was properly served upon all parties to the docket 10 days prior to the proposed hearing date, consistent with the Kansas Administrative Procedure Act. Parties have subsequently conferred for a pre-hearing conference and have engaged in communications relating to the hearing procedure for today's hearing on today's date. And therefore, staff recommends finding proper notice for this hearing.
Thank you, Carly. Are there any objections to notice? Hearing none, I find that notice is proper and the commission has jurisdiction over this proceeding at this time and place. Before we turn to preliminary matters, let's consider a few matters incidental to the conduct of this hearing via Zoom. First, if any party encounters any technical issue today, I would encourage you to go off the record, to ask to go off the record rather, so that we can try to resolve the technical issue off the record. Second, witnesses participating by Zoom are asked to keep their microphones off when they are not scheduled to speak or are not speaking. Third, if the commission needs to deliberate, we will be going off the record in that event and entering a Zoom breakout room where you can't see or hear us. And then after that is concluded, we would return. Fourth, since we are participating at a distance, and interestingly enough, across the expanse of the state, please be careful to identify exactly what you're referring to when discussing either pre-file testimony or exhibits. We have copies of all of that on hand, so we should be able to follow along if you will identify it for us. I would ask all parties at this time, are there any preliminary matters that you would wish that we address? Hearing none, let's move to the procedure for the hearing. For this hearing, I understand that the parties wish to make opening statements in accordance with agreements previously arrived at. Southern Pioneer will go first, followed by National Beef, Curb, and Staff. As I understand it, WKIEC has waived their opening statement. After opening statements, we will follow the order of witnesses agreed to in the pre-hearing conference. I also understand that at the pre-hearing conference, the parties indicated that they will not make closing statements and that all have waived post-hearing briefs. Okay, let's turn now to opening statements, and we will begin with Southern Pioneer. Lindsay, are you there?
I am. I apologize. I was trying to pull up my slides. One second.
That's fine. We have the screen share. It's up now. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Lindsay Campbell. I am the Assistant CEO and General Counsel for Southern Pioneer Electric Company. Southern Pioneer is here today requesting approval of our filed financial plan to recover the extraordinary costs we incurred during the February winter storm Uri event, as modified and agreed to by the parties to this proceeding. By way of background, we are a not-for-profit utility. We provide retail and wholesale electric services in portions of Southwest and South Central Kansas. Southern Pioneer is one of 7 distribution member owners of our wholesale power provider, Sunflower Electric Power Corporation. As we know, Winter Storm Uri wreaked havoc on the SPP region during the week of February 15, 2021. Also, as you know, SPP provides several different services to its member utilities. As a distribution utility that relies on Sunflower to provide our power supply, we are not a member of SPP. Rather, Sunflower is an SPP member and procures wholesale energy off the SPP market to service Southern Pioneer and its members. SPP also serves as the consolidated balancing authority for the SPP footprint. And in that role as the balancing authority, SPP is responsible for ensuring the continuous balance of supply and demand across the entire footprint. And they are required to initiate various levels of what we call energy emergency alerts, or EEAs, when the system conditions warrant, as we saw that week in February. I won't repeat the events that happened that week, as I know the commission is very familiar with the conditions that led to the quote unquote perfect storm. I would, however, like to highlight how it impacted Southern Pioneer the actions that we took in response to protect our customers, as well as how we are proposing to recover the extraordinary cost of the event to help reduce the burden on our consumers. So this chart that you see, it's from SPP, and it shows actually the various EEAs that were issued by SPP throughout the week. Really starting the weekend before on the 13th and 14th, SPP was issuing what we call a notice of conservative operations. And we were also really starting to see spikes in wholesale power market prices. Sunflower initiated actually on Sunday afternoon, the 14th, initiated a conference call with Southern Pioneer and the other Sunflower distribution members to inform us of the situation. We, in turn, that evening attempted to call our key accounts and other customers to inform them of the system conditions, as well as the spikes that we were starting to see in the market prices. And it was really from that point on that we were in constant communication with Sunflower to receive as real-time information as possible with regard to both system reliability and economic market conditions, which we in turn then immediately communicated to all of our customers, including our C&I accounts, our emergency management contacts in each county, our franchise city contacts, and our critical care facilities. We did this through a variety of several different mediums, both formal and informal. We did telephone calls, text messages, emails, Facebook posts, radio spots. We did it through our Smart Hub messaging capabilities. And then our CEO put out a video explaining the event actually on Wednesday of that week. So as you can see by the red illustrated on the chart, on Monday morning, February 15th, when SPP initiated its first level EEA2, asking its members to issue formal public appeals to conserve energy, we immediately made that appeal to all of our customers. And we did have several customers in response that made significant efforts to conserve energy or roll over onto self-generation, including some of the large industrials that are parties to this docket. We also had some of our franchise cities shut down their non-essential services throughout various times during the week. These efforts didn't go unnoticed and did make a material difference in system demand that helped ensure the event wasn't longer lasting or more devastating, which we greatly appreciate. Additionally, these conservation efforts help Southern Pioneer and these specific customers reduce their kilowatt hour exposure to the astronomically high wholesale market prices that Sunflower experienced during that week. At approximately noon on Monday, February 15th and early morning, February 16th, SPP initiated controlled service curtailments under an EEA level 3, which is the highest level of EEAs. Southern Pioneer, we had no advance notice of when and where these load curtailments were going to occur. SPP determines the total amount of load required to be shed in order to bring the system back in balance or supply back in balance with demand, and then allocates that out on a pro rata share to SPP utilities. So Sunflower, as the member of SPP, received the directive from SPP to shed its pro rata share of load, and Sunflower is required to do so within 10 minutes. Therefore, Sunflower had no ability to inform its distribution members ahead of time of what circuits would be impacted and for how long under the Sunflower load shedding plan. Once we were aware that the outages were occurring, we immediately contacted all of our affected customers to let them know what was occurring. And also during the controlled curtailment, Sunflower rotated circuits in an effort to minimize outage times as best as possible. In terms of the financial impacts of the event, Sunflower experienced natural gas prices spike to about $1,000 in MMBTU during that week, and saw SPP wholesale market prices at one point spike to approximately $3,700 a megawatt hour. On average, Sunflower is able to purchase energy off the market at about $20 a megawatt hour. Additionally, Sunflower, through its coal resource and fixed price renewable contracts, which serve as a hedge against market volatility, normally only has about an 11% exposure to the market. However, because the wind and solar production were relatively minimal that week, Sunflower's load was about 34% exposed to the exorbitant market prices that we saw that week. That exposure, along with the natural gas purchases made to run the Sunflower gas generation units, resulted in Sunflower initially incurring about $92.5 million in extraordinary fuel and market costs that week. Southern Pioneer's kilowatt hour share of this cost was approximately $17 million. This equated to about an additional 28.4 cent per kilowatt hour energy cost adjustment, or ECA, charge from Sunflower, and that was billed in total to Southern Pioneer and the other members in March of 2021. We were able to work with our primary lender, CoBank, to execute a 3-year term loan that allowed us to cover our power bill payment to Sunflower. And then we took this cost and deferred it into a regulatory asset pending approval to recover from the commission, as we are asking for in the instant proceeding. I would also note that our customers were informed of the estimated financial impacts as soon as the costs were known, which included a formal press release as well as an informational mailer sent to all of our customers explaining the event and the current customer financial impacts. On March 10th, 2021, our application was filed with the commission requesting approval to recover the $17 million in extraordinary costs in equal installments over a 36-month billing period in order to mitigate the financial impacts to our customers as much as possible. Each customer's share of the extraordinary costs would be based on the individual customer's total kilowatt hour usage during the month of February. We also proposed in our application that any future costs or credits received due to whether it be SPP market resettlements, governmental ordered proceeds, natural gas credits, or additional costs, if material, would be allocated back to each customer under the same methodology. Otherwise, if immaterial, we requested that it be allowed to flow through our normal ECA billing. So this example that you see on the screen illustrates the billing impact to an average residential customer that uses about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. At 28.4 cents a kilowatt hour, the average residential customer would incur a total of $284 in extraordinary charges. If you were to divide that out over the 36-month installments, that would be about $8 a month of an additional charge on the monthly bill for the next 36 months. On June 11th, we did file an amended and supplemental application primarily to request inclusion of our carrying charges in the regulatory asset for recovery from individual customers, really to ensure from an equitable basis that we were recovering the carrying costs from the cost causers. These carrying charges are at a rate of 2.889%, which reflects the cost of debt of carrying the $17 million in addition to the minimum debt service coverage ratio required by our lender, CoBank. On December 21st, staff filed its report and recommendation. They did recommend approval of our financial plan, finding that the $17 million in costs were prudently incurred, costs necessary to provide electric service during the energy emergency event. Additionally, as part of that report, staff recommended that we track any modifications to the $17 million in costs related to market settlements, natural gas invoicing, or governmental orders related to market manipulation. Finally, staff also recommended that any revisions to that $17 million that were greater than 10% would be charged or credited back to customers on an individual basis. And if they were less than 10%, then it would simply flow through the monthly ECA in the year realized. CURB did file a response to staff's report and recommendation indicating agreement with staff's recommendations, and then also additionally making some recommendations around the carrying charges and recovery periods and their review if there were revisions, to the $17 million in costs, and that specifically potential refunds be considered for special recovery treatment. After discussions with all the parties, we are pleased that all the parties to this docket, Southern Pioneer, staff, CURB, WKIC, and National Beef, have reached an agreement And we are requesting that the commission approve the company's financial plan as filed with the additional recommendations from staff and CURB. The parties also request that one additional modification be made to the plan that would remove the minimum debt service coverage ratio adder of 0.749% from the calculation of carrying costs to be recovered by the plan, as fully discussed in the supplemental testimony filed by Southern Pioneer Witness and CFO Chantry Scott on February 9th. Therefore, we respectfully request that the commission issue a final order approving Southern Pioneer's financial plan as filed with the modifications agreed to by all the parties to the proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next up, CURB.
Thank you. May it please the commission. My name is Joseph Baystrab, and I, along with Consumer Counsel David Nickel and Attorney Todd Love, represent the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB. Our duty is to represent residential and small commercial ratepayers on utility regulation matters before the Kansas Corporation Commission, and to advocate for sufficient and efficient service at the most reasonable price. CURB is here today to recommend that the commission approve Southern Pioneer's financial plan to recover approximately $17 million in extraordinary costs incurred during the winter event, as recommended by the parties in their joint motion. In February 2021, Kansas experienced an unprecedented convergence of market and operational disruptions during the Winter Storm Uri and winter event. Electric utilities within SPEE footprint all grappled with days of peak levels of demand and supply constraints, which ultimately drove up the price of fuel. Southern Pioneer and its generation and transmission provider, Sunflower Electric Power Cooperative, faced challenges like other utilities in the region. While there's no formal pre-written testimony from CURB analyst Patrick Orr is present today to testify about and answer questions over the winter event and the review of Southern Pioneer's financial plan. Southern Pioneer is a member owner with Sunflower, in which Sunflower receives its electricity from Sunflower on behalf of Southern Pioneer's customers. In turn, Sunflower is a member of the Southwest Power Pool. Sunflower sells the energy it generates to SPP and buys energy it needs for its member owners from SPP. As part of this arrangement, Sunflower is required to adhere to strict capacity requirements and orders for load shedding. Sunflower works with Southern Pioneer to develop blocks of circuits available for shutting down in the event of orders from SPP. So during the winter event, Sunflower received these numerous calls for load shedding from SPP, as SPP was declaring escalating levels of energy emergencies. As a result, Sunflower relied upon these predetermined blocks of circuits and communicated with Southern Pioneer to coordinate controlled outages and other load shedding steps. While customers experience outages periodically, Southern Pioneer and Sunflower were able to maintain continuous power enough to avoid widespread outages and property damage. As a result, Sunflower incurred approximately $92.5 million in extraordinary costs on behalf of its member owners. Southern Pioneer received a bill in March 2021 for its share of approximately $17 million. To pay for this and maintain its services with Sunflower, Southern Pioneer turned to its primary lender, CoBank. Another unique aspect of Southern Pioneer is its use of formula-based rate making to set rates. Under this methodology, rates are determined using a number of inputs in a formula to establish an adequate revenue level to not only pay its debt obligations, but also to provide adequate assurances for the repayment of those debts. To that end, Southern Pioneer has a special lending arrangement with CoBank, in which Southern Pioneer must maintain revenue levels sufficient to cover the minimum loan covenants and payments. This utilizes something known as the debt service coverage ratio, or DSC. This ratio is applied to rate calculations to arrive at a revenue level needed to comply with the company's financial obligations. Southern Pioneer's financial plan, as supported by the parties, calls for determination that Southern Pioneer's actions during the winter event were prudent and the costs incurred were reasonable. In addition to the filings by Southern Pioneer, CURB and Commission staff have filed documents in this docket regarding our respective positions on the plan. In light of the situation that all utilities experienced and the successful efforts to maintain service throughout the storm, CURB believes that the costs incurred were prudently incurred and reasonable. The value to avoiding large-scale property damage and avoiding the risk associated with loss of power to critical care facilities should not be understated. CURB applauds the efforts of the individuals who work nonstop during the winter event to make ends meet and to keep the system afloat. However, CURB also understands that such a positive result does not come for free. The plan to recover extraordinary costs over 36 months provides a reasonable way to bill customers without imposing an excessive burden each month. Customers will be assigned an individual share of the cost based on their kilowatt hour usage in February 2021. In CURB's view, this is the most direct way to assess costs from the winter event without requiring payments from future ratepayers. All customers will have the option to pay their share of cost early to avoid the accrual of carrying charges. Southern Pioneer initially asked that the carrying cost be set aside for inclusion in its formula-based rates. However, Southern Pioneer later amended its plans to include a borrowing cost along with a DSC adder to avoid collecting winter event costs from customers who had no usage in February 2021 or who may become customers later on. The parties ultimately agreed upon a sharing of the carrying costs that strikes a fair balance for present and future residential ratepayers. The agreed upon carrying rate for the winter event regulatory asset is set at 2.14%, which represents the cost of debt as established by CoBank on the loan. The DSC adder will be removed from rate calculations at this time, as Southern Pioneer believes that its lender will be satisfied with the assurances provided by virtue of a commission order on the recovery and payment of that debt. CURB believes this will strike a good balance between mitigating financial impacts for current customers who will pay the cost of the winter event and avoiding excessive intergenerational and interclass subsidies. CURB's additional recommendation to support a case-by-case approach to any changes up or down with the total winter event cost is also reasonable and should be adopted by the Commission. Because of Southern Pioneer's unique structure and use of formula-based rates, consideration of financial impacts of changes in equity and debt may be helpful. Staff's recommendation to use a 10% threshold for the change before such a review begins is a reasonable manner to assess the level of review to efficiently utilize state resources. As state and federal investigations into the winter event continue, a finding significant enough to alter fuel costs that have already been paid may be a complex matter. CURB believes that even some limited collaboration after such a change is discovered will allow for thorough vetting and appropriate actions afterwards. Now, like many other winter dockets, CURB understands that many Kansans will have questions about their bills and the winter event overall. To that end, CURB is committed to working with interested parties in providing information and answering questions of all ratepayers. We strive to keep ratepayers apprised of updates in these winter event dockets through our newsletter, website, and direct constituent questions. CURB also anticipates Southern Pioneer gearing up for an increase in customer service calls. So to the extent that CURB can help facilitate effective and efficient communication between customers and utilities, we will do so. CURB asks that the Commission adopt the findings from staff's R&R and CURB's response in support of Southern Pioneer's financial plan as modified by the parties in the joint motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. National Beef.
Thank you. Good morning. May it please the Commission. My name is Ann Collenbach with the Polsinelli Law Firm. We represent National Beef, a beef processing company headquartered in Kansas City. National Beef employs over 8,000 persons throughout the U.S. National Beef also operates facilities in Liberal, Dodge City, and Kansas City, Kansas, and is one of Southern Pioneer's largest customers. Southern Pioneer serves multiple National Beef facilities in and around Liberal, Kansas. National Beef's main facility uses approximately $9.6 kilowatt hours a month. During the February weather event that is the subject of this proceeding, National Beef incurred approximately an additional $2.5 million in costs, and its ECA tripled as compared to the prior month in January. National Beef appreciates the cooperative and collaborative nature of the parties to this proceeding as we discuss the most appropriate way to address these cost increases and their impacts to Southern Pioneer's customers. National Beef believes that Southern Pioneer's financial plan, as modified by CURB and staff, to be reasonable in the public interest, and National Beef recommends that it be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And our final opening statement will be from the KCC staff. Carly?
Morning, Commissioners. Last February, Kansas and many other states were rocked by Winter Storm Uri, which imposed extreme weather conditions across the Midwest. The period of prolonged freeze caused record demand for natural gas and electricity and prompted serious health and safety concerns, widespread infrastructure and operational failures, and freeze-offs of facilities that were necessary for the generation of electricity. During this time, we all collectively witnessed the market price of both electricity and natural gas upsurge 200 to 300 times its normal range. On March 9th, 2021, the commission opened this company-specific general investigation docket for Southern Pioneer. Southern Pioneer is unique in comparison to other entities we have worked with on these winter weather investigative dockets. It is a not-for-profit business entity wholly owned by a cooperative, Pioneer Electric Company. This distinction is important because Southern Pioneer does not own any generation or operations related to the production of electricity, but is instead a member owner of its generation and transmission provider, which is Sunflower. During the winter weather event, several generation units, including Sunflower-owned generation units, experienced limited fuel supply or were not available to run during all or part of the event. Sunflower incurred $92.5 million of incremental fuel and market extraordinary costs during the event, which is nearly its entire annual budget for fuel and purchase power costs of $100 million. Southern Pioneer was allocated approximately $17 million of the estimated extraordinary event costs. And as you heard from the company, Southern Pioneer's plan is to allocate the cost to individual customers based on each customer's share of total company kilowatt hour usage during February 2021, which will be collected in equal monthly installments over a 36-month period. This would result in a charge of approximately $7.89 per month for an average residential customer. For any customer whose share of the regulatory asset is less than $5, Southern Pioneer requested the ability to bill that customer in just one bill instead of spreading such a minuscule amount over the 36 months. In the event there are revisions to winter storm costs because of further market resettlements, Southern Pioneer will flow any immaterial changes through its Energy Cost Adjustment Rider, or ECA. Any material changes will be spread out to customers over a similar 36-month timeframe as called for in the plan. Southern Pioneer has committed to return to customers any government assistance received to offset any of these extraordinary costs. Southern Pioneer later amended its application to clarify that approximately $400,000 of that $17 million in extraordinary costs would not be allocated to individual customers. These costs were related to line losses, company usage, and other miscellaneous items. And Southern Pioneer requested that this $400,000 be included in its ECA tariff, consistent with how other settlement adjustments have been charged. Southern Pioneer at that time also revised its application to request the inclusion of carrying charges on the extraordinary costs as they are being recovered from customers over the 36-month payoff period. Originally, Southern Pioneer planned to include the additional debt service and carrying costs in its annual formula-based rate filing for the commission. And while this would have allowed Southern Pioneer to recover its debt service costs, it would have also led to an inequitable sharing of the carrying costs among Southern Pioneer's customers, including local access delivery service customers who do not buy electricity from Southern Pioneer and therefore should not be assigned costs for the extraordinarily high electric prices. Through its investigation, staff has thoroughly reviewed Southern Pioneer's application, has issued and reviewed 60 discovery requests, most of which have multiple subparts, has reviewed the discovery of the interveners in this docket, and had multiple meetings and discussions with Southern Pioneer and the interveners. Staff's review confirms that Southern Pioneer and Sunflower's actions during the storm were reasonable, prudent, and necessary for the provision of continued electric service during the extreme Arctic conditions that were present during the storm. Southern Pioneer's plan will allow customers to pay off these extraordinary costs over a very reasonable period of 36 months, which will result in manageable bill increases for the majority of Southern Pioneer's customers. The plan will allocate the cost to each customer based off of their usage during February 2021, allowing customers who conserved during the storm to be rewarded for that behavior. Southern Pioneer's plan also recognizes the carrying costs that are necessary to allow a utility, even a not-for-profit utility like Southern Pioneer, to spread payment of these extraordinary costs out over an extended period for their customers. In the next several months, staff will file a comprehensive report in this docket that summarizes the results of our review of Southern Pioneer's preparation for and response to Winter Storm Uri. This report will also include recommendations for future winter weather events in Kansas, many of which Southern Pioneer is already implementing as a result of its own internal analysis and review. Staff does not intend this subsequent report to delay the implementation of Southern Pioneer's financial plan, but rather to complement it and to provide a path forward in case Kansas is struck with such a severe weather event in the future. In conclusion, staff recommends that the commission approve Southern Pioneer's application and its plan to recover these extraordinary fuel and purchase power costs associated with winter storm period. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. All right, this concludes the opening statements. We'll now turn to the examination of witnesses, of which there are three. Lindsay or Glenda, would you please call your witness?
Yes, Southern Pioneer Electric Company calls Kcc Staff. There.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, got your mic on. All right.
Denise, if you would swear the witness, please.
Yes, please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give and the matter now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
You state your name for the record, please,
Chantry Scott.
and your place of employment and your title there.
I work for Pioneer Electric. I am the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer.
And are you saying Chantry C. Scott, who caused to be filed in this docket, direct testimony on March 10th, 2021, consisting of 16 pages, and supplemental direct testimony on February 9th, 2022, consisting of 4 pages?
Yes, I am.
And do you have any corrections you need to make to either of those pieces of testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
I'd like to move to place into the record the direct and supplemental direct testimony of Chantry C. Scott.
Are there any objections? Without objections, they're admitted.
Okay, and I'll tender Mr. Scott for cross-examination.
All right. Thank you, Glenda. We'll commence the cross-examination beginning with commissioner questions. For that end, I will turn first to Commissioner French.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Very well. Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you and good morning, Commissioner or Chairman Keen. Mr. Scott, thank you for being here today. Just briefly, could you explain, my understanding is the carrying costs were reduced just in the last couple of days. An explanation of that, if you would, please.
Sure. Initially, the carrying cost included the cost of debt, but also a additional amount for the debt service coverage minimum that is required by our lender. We have been in conversations with our lender, and I guess the initial concern was if we didn't recoup that additional adder, that there would be no recovery and potentially we would fail that DSC coverage on an annual basis. We have talked to them and we have somewhat looked at the risk associated with excluding that on this particular note or loan that we have with our lender. And we feel the risk is fairly minimal. So does our lender, and you know, they feel that there's guaranteed recovery of this cost through this proceeding in the order over the 36-month period. So they're aware of the circumstances. And so we decided to change that and reduce that to just our cost of debt and remove that adder component for the margin requirement. And that won't be included in our future formula-based rates either. That's just something the company will stand the risk of, and our lender is okay and aware of that situation.
Thank you. I think that was a significant bonus to all involved. As we look at the $7, the estimated $7.89 over a 36-month time period, do you believe that your negotiations that finally reached this have, that these are just and reasonable rates for your customers to pay?
Yes, I do. I believe that does, extend that payment out over a period of time that's reasonable to a level that's not going to be a financial burden to our members. If we were to bill that all in 1 month through the energy cost adjustment like we normally would, that could cause some significant hardships for our customers. And we feel by spreading it over the 36 months that does reduce it to an amount that is a tolerable and doable level for most of our consumers.
And while it is perhaps tolerable, it's a significant increase, more than probably any rate increase that would come about at one time, I am assuming.
Yes, it is an increase over what they would normally see in our annual filings. It is, but I think in the total, when you look at a total members bill, that it's still a tolerable amount from month to month.
Okay. Also, I'd like to thank Ms. Campbell for her presentation. I thought that was very well thought out. And if anybody does go back to YouTube, it really does provide a complete story. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Thank you, Mr. Scott and Chairman Keene. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. I have no questions of Mr. Scott. We'll turn now to other interveners here for any questions they may have. First, WKIEC. Jim?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, National Beef.
No questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Curb.
No questions from Curb. Thank you.
Thank you. KCC Staff.
No questions from staff. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back to you, Ms. Kafer. Any redirect?
No redirect.
All right. I believe this concludes your testimony, Mr. Scott. We appreciate your appearance, and you may virtually step down.
Okay. Thank you.
Next witness up is for Curb. Mr. Astrap, would you please call your witness?
Yes, Commissioner. Thank you. At this time, Curb calls Patrick Orr to the stand.
Please raise your
Can you
right
hear me
hand.
okay? Sorry.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give and the matter now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please tell us your name, spelling your last name.
My name is Patrick N. Orr, O-R-R.
Thank you. And Mr. Orr, who do you work for and what is your business address?
I work for the Kansas Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB. My address is 1500 Southwest Arrowhead Road, Topeka, Kansas, 66604.
Thank you. And what is your title at CURB?
I am a regulatory analyst.
And as a regulatory analyst, what are your duties?
My duties are primarily responsible for analyzing or reviewing the dockets that come before CURB, to review the data that's submitted by the utility, their financial data, and to help draft data requests and reports for the attorneys that are assigned to those cases.
Thank you. And are you the same Patrick Orr that caused to be filed on March 16, 2021, a non-disclosure agreement pursuant to commission orders and docket number 21 SPEE 331 GIE?
I am.
And are you the rate analyst from CURB assigned to work on docket number 21 SPEE 331 GIE?
Yes, I am.
I want to talk with you about your work in this docket. Can you tell us generally about what you did as part of your review here?
Yes, sir. I first of all reviewed the application by Southern Pioneer regarding their financial plan. And then I helped draft data requests on behalf of CURB for information on Southern Pioneer's actions during the winter storm. I also reviewed the data requests that were submitted from other parties along with staff's report and recommendations. And then I helped to, or I met with CURB staff to review the data and help formulate CURB's response.
Thank you. And turning towards CURB's response there towards the end, could you please summarize CURB's position on Southern Pioneer's actions during the winter event?
Yes, I will. I believe CURB believes that Southern Pioneer acted prudently during this event. This was not a localized event just for Southern Pioneer, but it affected the Midwest. It affected utilities. They all faced the same situation where they were having to do extraordinary things during this event. Southern Pioneer was directed by Sunflower, its parent company, to do load sheds during the event. So Southern Pioneer, actually, there was another layer of communication. SPEE issued the load shed events to Sunflower, and then Sunflower had to dispatch those load shed events to Southern Pioneer. Fortunately, with the load shed events, there was minimal property damage, even if any at all. And fortunately, there was no loss of life during the load shed events. So those are costs that would be very, very difficult to measure.
Great, thank you. And during your review of Southern Pioneer's actions during the financial event, did you come across any documents and evidence regarding their communication with customers during the storm?
Yes, they did. I thought that our CURB thinks that they communicated very well. They did this, as was mentioned in the opening remarks, by Facebook posts, by text messages, by communications from their chief officers to customers, advising them of the winter weather event that was to occur.
Thank you. I want to turn now towards Southern Pioneer's filed financial plan. Please tell us about CURB's position on the financial plan. And in your view, could you explain what makes the plan reasonable to you and what benefits will it provide ratepayers?
Yes, sir. CURB believes that the financial plan submitted by Southern Pioneer is prudent. The plan allows customers to repay the loan, to repay their share of winter weather event costs over a 36-month period, as opposed to having it flow through the ECA. My understanding with Southern Pioneer's ECA that the costs for the ECA are spread over seven periods. And so this means that it's very possible that the cost the usage that was incurred in February would not actually be billed until a later time, say maybe April or May. So the financial plan allows the customer to pay these costs based upon February usage, and they will spread it over 36 months. They will include the cost of they will include carrying charges in the rate, but that is a cost that CURB believes is financially prudent. It allows the extension of the loan. It also allows the customers, if they're able to pay their charges in one lump sum, as opposed to spreading it over 36 months and avoiding interest penalties.
Thank you for that. And so today, what is your recommendation for the commission?
CURB recommends, I recommend that the commission approve Southern Pioneer's financial plan. They acted prudently in their duties. they fulfilled the requirements of Governor Kelly of keeping the electricity flowing, and they also fulfilled the role or the request from the commission that they do all they can to keep the power flowing to their customers. So I believe that the costs incurred were prudent and their actions were prudent.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions, and I would tender the witness for commissioner questions now.
Very much. We will turn to cross-examination, and as with the prior witness, we'll begin first with commissioner questions, beginning with Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Orr.
Good morning, Commissioner.
First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Astrab, for your brief explanation as to how CURB is willing to assist Southern Pioneer as the bill charges begin to go out and folks understand, whoa, there's an extra line on my bill. What is this about? I do think that's important of the Citizen Utility Ratepayer Board to try and work with companies to help them strategize on how to best inform customers. Also, I hope you'll be able to refer them to this proceeding so that they have a better understanding of the commission's activities on this particular event. So if I can turn to Mr. Orr, during the proceedings, do you believe that opposing party issues and their concerns were aptly heard?
I do believe that is true, Commissioner. The parties have had numerous meetings. We've entered into negotiations on the settlement agreement, and I believe that all parties have voiced their opinions, and we've been able to work through any type of issue that was brought up to reach a satisfactory conclusion.
Okay, very good. Do you believe that the evidence presented, and I believe you also as an entity had some data requests, but that the evidence presented was competent, supported and very forthright?
Yes, I do believe that. Staff and CURB, other parties issued numerous data requests to Southern Pioneer. Southern Pioneer answered those requests truthfully. They divulged their operations. Any type of financial data was thoroughly was given, and those were thoroughly answered. Operational questions, yes, those were all answered to our satisfaction.
Very good. Because you are a party to this agreement, I'm assuming that you believe the costs that will be passed on to consumers represents reasonable and fair rates.
Yes, I believe that, and CURB believes that. It's CURB would hope that there would not be a rate increase, but we understand that this was an extraordinary event. Utilities within the Midwest and Texas face these issues, and they face the same type of operational issues, whether it was procuring energy. Fortunately for Southern Pioneer, there was really no loss of life, and again, that is, to me, that's the reason. That's the best outcome that there could be.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Keen.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. Cross-examination, Commissioner French.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions either of Mr. Orr. That concludes the commission questions. Let's turn to the other conferees. First up will be WKIEC. Cross-examination.
Thank you. No questions.
Thank you. National Beef.
Thank you. We have no questions.
Thank you. Southern Pioneer. Southern Pioneer, any cross-examination?
No, I do not have any.
Okay, thank you. KCC staff.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Astrap, do you care to redirect?
I have no redirect for Mr. Orr. May he step down, please?
You may.
Thank
Mr. Orr, thank you for your testimony. It has concluded. You may virtually step down.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, we've reached the final witness, which is the Kcc Staff Witness. Ms. Massington, would you please call your witness?
Yes, at this time, I would like to call staff's witness, Justin T. Grady.
Good morning.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give and the matter now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Grady. Would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Justin T. Grady, and my business address is 1500 Southwest Arrowhead Road, Topeka, Kansas, 66604.
Would you please state your title and position at the commission?
Yeah, my title is Chief of Revenue Requirements, Cost of Service, and Finance.
Are you the same Justin Grady who caused to be filed in the docket staff's report and recommendation?
Yes.
Do you presently have any revisions to that report and recommendation?
No.
To the extent that it is necessary, I would now move to admit staff's report and recommendation into the record.
Is there any objection? Without objection, the staff's R&R will be admitted into the record.
Thank you. I now tender the witness for cross-examination.
All right, very good. As we've done with the two prior witnesses, we will begin this time as well with commissioner questions. This time I'll begin with Commissioner French.
Grady, I know you're going to be disappointed, but I have no questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Duffy.
Hello, Justin. We're going to have to get some higher wattage light bulbs or something around your desk, but oh, there we go. It was mentioned earlier this morning that there will be another proceeding to talk about going forward. While this has to do with the financial issues, is that correct that there'll be another proceeding to talk about changes, tweaks, process going forward?
Yeah, I guess the one minor clarification I would add is that we plan on filing another report in this docket that addresses, I guess, anything operationally or communication wise that we would recommend that Southern Pioneer and Sunflower implement going forward in preparation for the next winter weather event. So I don't expect it to be another docket or another proceeding, and whether or not those recommendations are rise to the level of needing another hearing or even a commission order, I guess is remains to be seen. Maybe a commission order that recognizes and acknowledges the work that had been done, but this report was a little. This report was almost like the middle ground between just addressing the financial plan and the full comprehensive report like we filed in the Evergy docket, because there's, as you've seen, there's a fair degree of discussion about the operational challenges that Sunflower faced during the event. Their gas purchases and whether or not that was market competitive and sort of you know, how they managed through the event and what their exposure to it all was. So, you know, our comprehensive report, when we file it, it may not be, you know, it may not be all that extensive because we've covered quite a bit of it already with this first report, but it's, you know, it's just, it was a timing issue and really a resource allocation issue that there are a few areas that we weren't able to include in this report, but you know, Southern Pioneer was one of the first utilities to file their plan, and unfortunately, they're sort of in the middle of the pack here in terms of us addressing them, and that falls on my shoulders. That's my fault. And so, you know, I didn't want to delay any longer our recommendation on their financial plan, and so that's why there's another phase of the report coming.
Okay, very good. Thank you for providing some additional information around that. Each of these entities stands on their own, correct? So it's not a one size fits all. So there'll be additional information as it relates to Southern Pioneer. Okay, thank you. As you've been a party to all of the dockets related to Winter Storm Uri, do you believe that the decision here today is supported by confident evidence?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's, you know, we went into a fair amount of detail. What I think is certainly sufficient amount of detail in our report and recommendation, you know, addressing Southern Pioneer's decisions and its activities, Sunflower's activities and decisions during the storm. You know, what the gas that they purchased was purchased according to standard industry practices and purchasing practices. They made, you know, the economics of the gas purchases that they made were consistent with industry practices and published index prices. So, you know, I've reviewed this activity, this company's activities in excruciating detail, and I think that they did a very good job of managing, you know, during extremely difficult circumstances. So, you know, this company's exposure and experience during this event was really not much different than the other electric utilities that I've experienced or that I've reviewed in Kansas. You know, each utility's exposure, financial exposure, really comes down to what level of dispatchable non-gas related energy did the utility have to be able to offset its exposure to wholesale market prices, right? And this utility was very fortunate, and I don't suggest that it was luck. It was hard work and skill and determination that allowed their Holcomb power plant to run at near full capacity during the vast majority of the hours of this storm. And that plant was the difference between them incurring truly devastating amounts of market power, you know, wholesale market power costs, and what they incurred, which is not an insignificant amount, but it's certainly manageable. So yeah, you know, we went into a fair amount of detail about the company's operations and their efforts to continue to provide service and everything that they did. You know, if there's any questions about that, I certainly can provide the clarifications, but I'm comfortable recommending the commission approve the financial plan, that they acted prudently.
Very good. My final question has to do with the filing that just came just hours ago, a day ago, related to the reduction of the carrying charge. Can you provide just a little bit, how does that really benefit the customer?
So, you know, that I guess that's going to depend on your perspective. or, you know, the individual customer that receives the payment plan and that receives, you know, that receives an invoice for these extraordinary costs, it will reduce the amount that customer will pay for that portion of their bill, right? But you know, there's no free lunch, and in this case in particular, Southern Pioneer is a not-for-profit that is owned by another cooperative, which is owned by its customers, right? And so we regulate Southern Pioneer as if they were a cooperative, and in my mind, they basically are, because from my perspective, you know, the equity in that corporation was financed and funded by its ratepayers, and so there's really no difference there. So, you know what, I'm fine with the agreement that was reached regarding carrying charges. I think it would have been a reasonable, you know, a just and reasonable result if the carrying charge had been 2.889% as well. Because at the end of the day, that, you know, that debt service coverage ratio, it's a requirement by CoBank. Okay, it is going to be paid, and it is going to be accumulated, and that margin will be earned, or the company will default on their debt, and that they're not going to allow that to happen. So this company has no shareholder, they have no shareholders, there are no investors to you know, get the debt service coverage from. So basically what will happen is they're going to manage this on their own with their formula-based rate, and that formula-based rate is paid for. I mean, it's the management of this, the debt service coverage will come from customer rates. There is no other source of revenue for this company. So, you know, it's sort of, do you take it out of the left pocket or the right? From my view, I mean, you know, it's the debt service coverage will be paid, and so, so it's fine. I reviewed Mr. Scott's testimony this morning. I thought it was well done, and it explains, you know, the mechanics of the way that it will work. The most important thing about the inclusion of carrying charges in the payment plan to staff was that those interest costs not be included in their formula-based rate filing, right? If the interest costs were included in the formula-based rate filing, then there would be a problem. There would be cross-subsidization, and you'd have customers paying for debt costs that shouldn't be, because they don't purchase power from Southern Pioneer, and that would have been a problem. But where we are today, it's fine. I think it's reasonable, and I support it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate you wrapping some additional explanation around these issues. And thank you, Mr. Chairman Keene.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. Good morning, Justin.
Hey, good morning. Sure.
A couple of questions for me. I'm going to start with the obvious question to me that your testimony in response to Commissioner Duffy's questions raised, and that is, within the confines of the current procedural schedule, how do you anticipate that your supplemental R&R will impact that schedule?
Oh, I don't anticipate that it will or should impact the schedule in any form or fashion, right? So everything that I have to say, or that we've reviewed with regard to the financial plan, suggests that the plan should move forward, and it's reasonable, and you know, Southern Pioneer acted prudently with regard to this with regard to this storm and this event. If we make operational recommendations, you know, with regard to moving forward and the way that we think, you know, Southern Pioneer and Sunflower may be able to be better prepared for the next event, then those recommendations won't have anything to do with any concern that, that Southern Pioneer Sunflower acted imprudently or inappropriately. It won't have anything to do, specifically with their gas purchases. It'd be more like communications, recommendations, or follow up for additional reporting. And so that's the answer, is that I think the commission, as soon as resources allow, and as soon as the commission is comfortable with the result here, should enter an order that approves the financial plan and allows Southern Pioneer to move forward with its plan.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that level of detail. Do you have any idea when you might proffer this supplemental R&R?
No, I mean, I could give you an idea, but unfortunately, I mean, what we said in our original R&R was in the next several months. But Chair, as you know, there is a lot going on, and we're sort of about in the middle of these financial plans. And so, in part, it just depends on how some of these other proceedings go. My goal is certainly to have that filed before the second half of the year. There's just, hopefully within the next 3 months.
My reason for asking that was, as things stand right now, a commission order in this docket is due by March 15th. That was the reason for my question.
Okay.
Let me ask you the one question I was intending to ask you, and I thought I'd be limited to one question, but things are never cast in stone until they're over, are they? Here's my question, Justin. I want to afford you the widest latitude in that is to opine on this docket. I think you've probably already answered this, and to the extent you feel that it's duplicating what you've already said, you can be more brief here. But I want to give you the opportunity to respond to my question in quite an open-ended fashion. My question is this: in your opinion, does the record in this matter satisfy, does it sufficiently establish that commission approval of the financial plan and of the joint motion on a final order in this docket would be in the public interest?
So I believe it is. What I always think about in terms of rate making proceedings and whether or not they're in the public interest and just and reasonable rates generally, right, are and as you know, the Kansas Supreme Court mandates that the commission consider and balance the interest of investors versus ratepayers, current ratepayers versus future ratepayers, and in general, the public interest. There are no investors with Southern Pioneer. Its owners are, are its customers essentially. And so this is a not-for-profit utility that is just seeking to minimize costs and make its loan obligations, meet its financial obligations with regard to its indebtedness. And so I think they've done fine, and I think they did an admirable job managing through the event. I certainly think they were prudent and reasonable in their actions and activities. With regard to present versus future ratepayers, Southern Pioneer's plan is pretty impressive in that regard, right? They are tracking the individual customer by customer contribution to these costs during this period of time, and then assigning those costs to those customers. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's the sort of thing that other larger utilities would be very difficult, would have problems implementing and would be objecting to. But it goes to the nature of Southern Pioneer. They are owned by a cooperative. They have a cooperative mindset, and cooperatives are owned by their customers, as you know. And so they track, they track individual contribution to equity and individual customer by customer ownership of that company all the time. And so it was sort of natural for them to track these costs on a per customer by customer basis. And so there's no problem with regard to future, between current and future ratepayers. That's been appropriately balanced. And then, generally with regard to whether or not the plan is in the public interest, it's in the public interest for the commission to, thoroughly scrutinize and evaluate the actions and activities of this utility, and to determine, have they been, were their actions prudent? Were they reasonable? Did they do everything they could to continue to provide service and do so economically? And I think the answer to that is yes. And then from the question of, is the plan to spread these costs in equal monthly installments over a 36-month period of time? Is that reasonable and in the public interest? Does it allow customers, to improve affordability and to have predictability and stability in their rates? And I think it does all those things. So I certainly feel comfortable recommending that the commission issue an order based on the record as it stands, as supplemented by today's evidentiary hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grady. That concludes my questions of Mr. Grady. Given his responses to both my questions and those of Commissioner Duffy, in all fairness, Commissioner French, I'm going to turn to you and ask if you have one more bite of the apple. Would you have an interest? Do you have any questions for Mr. Grady?
You can't lure me in. I appreciated his answer, but no more questions. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Speak now or forever hold your peace, as we say. Let's move on to other councilors if we might.
Chair Keen?
Yes.
If I could just briefly, I do appreciate everybody adjusting their schedules and being here today. I do believe it is important that everyone appear, even by Zoom, which has made this so much easier, to discuss the nature of this current proceeding. And I do believe for those who will be directly affected, that having, beyond a paper document, having a proceeding to turn to if they wish is extremely beneficial and helpful to the understanding of what is going to happen to them in terms of payment for what occurred literally a year ago. And that seems like so long ago, and I can't even imagine staff. It probably seems like the never-ending nightmare. But I do believe that it is incumbent upon us to have a proceeding like this, share this, and maybe only a handful of people, customers, will ever watch this. But I appreciate the additional information received here today. And I want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. Let's move on to further cross-examination. WKIEC.
No questions, please.
Thank you, Jim. National Beef.
No questions.
Thank you. Curb.
No questions, thank you.
Southern Pioneer.
No questions.
Wow. Well, we'll turn back then to the staff. Carly, do you have any redirect?
I do not have any redirect.
All right. Well, I believe, Mr. Grady, that concludes your testimony. Thank you very much for your appearance this morning, Justin, and you may virtually step down.
Thank you.
I think we're reaching the end of this hearing. Is there any other matters that the parties would like to address before we move to closure? Hearing none, this will conclude our hearing in docket number 21-SPEE-331-GIE. As a reminder, of course, we're not having in this instance any post-hearing briefs. A commission order in this docket is due by March 15th, 2022. And I'll say one other thing before we do adjourn. I want to thank you, Denise, for your efforts this morning in serving as our scrivener here. We appreciate your efforts very much. And those of our IT staff as well for arranging for the logistics and executing this really somewhat flawless. It went pretty well this morning. So our thanks to all, and our thanks to all of the participants. We appreciate all of the input that you've been willing to put into this process from the outset of this docket until today. If there are no further matters at this time, we will adjourn. Thank you all. Take care.